Our next guest knows a little something about housing, serving as U.S. HUD Secretary, former mayor of San Antonio, and now in his current role as executive chairman of CityView. We're talking about, of course, Henry Cisneros. He joins us from Texas. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Melissa, thank you.
As we seemingly emerge from this crisis, Mr. Cisneros, I do want to ask you, because a lot of people out there will point to you as being a player in this whole thing. In the mid-90s, some people say that you directed Fannie and Freddie to buy and guarantee mortgages of low to moderate income borrowers. You then joined the boards of KB Homes and Countrywide Financial, which of course were also players in this whole mess. And then you yourself became a developer. Before we get your thoughts on where we are in the housing crisis, can you step back at this point and assess your role in this whole mess?
Well, I think the wrong lesson to take from this whole crisis would be that we ought to de-emphasize home ownership. What we did in the 90s was push, in I think responsible ways, for increasing the home ownership rate, and we did. For average families, for minority families, we proved that home ownership is the critical engine to building the middle class and improving prosperity, and contributed
to the longest... So, sir, where did it go wrong then?
I think that it got out of hand in the 2001-2002 period. A lot of people saw the boom. The world was awash in capital. We had people come to housing who had no business in it, including offering exotic products, no document, no down payment. We had the rating agencies misrating paper. We had the secondary market responding to this world awash in capital with the SIVs and the CDOs and other toxic devices that they then pushed into international markets. And frankly, the whole thing exploded in a way that could not have been foreseen, and it was not the result of the press for home ownership. It was more a function, frankly, of irresponsibility and greed run amok.
Well,
and
irresponsibility
I think the analyses will find plenty of blame to be placed, but I don't think it was on the push that was made in the 1990s for home ownership.
Well, the irresponsibility goes to some of the homeowners as well that used their house as an ATM machine, frankly, when they saw the value of their house, or at least what they thought the value of their house, rise, take equity out of the house, and now they found themselves in a position that they probably weren't prepared for, or frankly, didn't know what could have happened. They didn't know what the possibilities were. Well, responsibility is both sides of the coin.
Yes, sir. The policy push, however, was never for taking equity out of homes. It was for home ownership for people to live in. And when we as a country started to look at a house as more of an investment than as a place for people to live, then everybody was responsible, including homeowners who stretched too far beyond their means, who fell privy to he fell victim to these no document kind of temptations. And as you say, people who were looking at their house as an investment. So there's plenty of blame to pass around. But the mistake, I think, would be to view, looking backward, to view home ownership as the problem, because we're going to need strong home ownership going forward when we come out of this, and it will continue to be one of the principal building blocks for the American prosperity, for American future. So we've got to get a balance between home ownership and rental and housing policy, but let's not mistakenly designate home ownership as the whole root of the crisis.
Mr. Secretary, it's Karen. Do you think the bottom is in? Have we seen the worst of the housing declines? Or all the declines?
Yeah, I do believe that we've seen the bottom, and I believe it's a pretty steady climb up from here. And I say that for both statistical, factual reasons, things like the solidifying of home prices in many markets. I was in Denver, where we have a community, and saw data on 5 months now of home price increases in Denver. In Salt Lake, 3 months consecutively of home price increases. And everywhere, home sales, both existing homes as well as new homes, are up. So that's the factual side of it. From an anecdotal standpoint, our own company, just this weekend, we opened had the official launch of a community in West Los Angeles that opened in July, and have sold 84 homes of a total 119 available, loft space for young professionals in a kind of a new media section of Los Angeles, but much, much more successful than we'd imagined. We had another community nearby that pro forma'd 15 sales from August 8th to the end of the year, August 8th when it opened, and has sold about 30 homes there. So my own personal evidence is that the latent demand that had built up over all this period, matched to lower interest rates, matched to first-time homebuyer tax credit, and matched to responsible pricing on the part of buyers, is bringing people to the market.
Right.
Secretary Cisneros, to that point, you talk about strong ownership going forward, looking forward for 2010. You will see the home buyer tax credit disappear at some point. You will also see a rise in interest rates. Private sector borrowing costs will increase. At that point, then, what do you see for housing? Will you have that strong ownership?
Well, I think housing is going to be a little bit stronger than we might have expected from now to the end of the year, although we're going into the season traditionally where because of the holidays and the winter months, people don't buy. So I was thinking more second quarter of 2010 is when we would see a real surge. I mean, a real sense that we're back. And by the way, housing is so critical to our economy, by some estimates up to 20% of GDP when you take into account finance, construction, materials, transportation, appliances, all the rest. It's hard to imagine an overall American recovery without the housing sector. But I would say by second quarter of next year, it's going to be very, very solid. Now, you're right. In all likelihood, the home buyer tax credit will have ended about that point. Interest rates may start to tail up somewhere in the middle of 2010. So the housing sector will be somewhat more on its own. But because of latent demand, because of the lack of supply that hasn't been built during this period, I think you're going to see all of the indicators are going to be sort of positive, and the trajectory will be upward in a more natural way into 2010.
Mr. Cisneros, a pleasure to have you with us. We appreciate your time. Henry Cisneros.